Sarah Chen pressed her face against the small window of the transport ship. The massive space station grew larger with each passing moment. Kepler Station looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness, its arms stretching out toward the orange gas giant behind it. She had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, but now that it was here, her stomach felt tight with worry. The other passengers on the transport kept looking at her. They tried to be quiet about it, but Sarah could feel their eyes. A tall blue creature with too many arms whispered something to his friend. A small furry being with big black eyes stared at her and then quickly looked away when she noticed. Sarah knew what they were thinking. She was human. She came from Earth. Earth was what the galaxy called a death world, a planet so dangerous that most aliens could not believe anything smart could live there. To them, humans were like monsters from scary stories. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Sarah grabbed her single bag and followed the other new cadets through the airlock. The station was huge inside. The ceiling stretched up so high she could barely see it. Aliens of every shape and color walked through the wide halls. Some had scales, some had fur, some looked like they were made of crystal or metal. A voice spoke over the speakers. All new cadets report to Hall 7 for orientation. Sarah followed the group down a long corridor. The walls were covered with pictures of famous graduates. She saw aliens in military uniforms from dozens of different worlds. Not one human face looked back at her. Hall 7 was a large room with seats arranged in circles. Sarah sat in the back, hoping no one would notice her. But as more cadets came in, they all seemed to find seats as far from her as possible. Soon she was sitting alone in a circle of empty chairs. A tall alien walked to the front of the room. He looked like he was made of blue crystal, with light moving inside his body like slow lightning. His voice was deep and musical when he spoke. "Welcome to Kepler Station Military Academy. I am Commander Vexhai. You are here because you are the best of the best from your worlds." The commander's eyes found Sarah in the crowd. She felt like he was looking right through her. "This year we have a special situation. For the first time in our academy's history, we have admitted a human cadet." Every head in the room turned to look at Sarah. She felt her face get hot, but she kept her back straight and looked ahead. Humans come from what we classify as a Class 12 death world. Their planet is covered with dangerous animals, poisonous plants, and deadly weather. Most of our scientists believed that intelligent life could not develop in such conditions. A cadet with green skin and 4 eyes raised his hand. "Commander, is it safe to have a human here? I heard they can go crazy and attack without warning." Commander Vexhai nodded slowly. "That is one of many stories about humans. Sarah Chen has been granted probationary admission to our academy. She will be watched closely to make sure she can control her aggressive tendencies." Sarah's hands turned into fists in her lap. Probationary admission? No one had told her about that. She thought she had earned her place here just like everyone else. "Humans are unpredictable," the commander continued. "Their world has made them strong, but it has also made them violent. We will see if Sarah can learn to be civilized." After the orientation, Sarah tried to find her room. The station was like a maze of corridors and lifts. She got lost twice before finding the right section. Her room was small but clean, with a bed, a desk, and a small window looking out at space. She had just started to unpack when someone knocked on her door. When she opened it, 3 cadets stood in the hallway. The one in front was tall and covered in gray scales. He had yellow eyes and sharp teeth that showed when he smiled. "You must be the human," he said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am Thexamor of the Valdani Empire. My people are the greatest warriors in the galaxy." Sarah nodded. "I'm Sarah Chen." "Chen?" Thexamor repeated slowly. "That is a strange name. Does it mean something in your primitive language?" "It's just a name," Sarah said quietly. One of the other cadets, a red-skinned alien with tentacles for arms, laughed. "I heard humans name themselves after the animals they kill and eat." "That's not true," Sarah said. Thexamor stepped closer. He was much taller than Sarah, and she had to look up to see his face. "Tell me, little human, how many of your own kind have you killed?" "What? I've never killed anyone." "Really? But humans are always fighting each other. Your world is covered in wars." Sarah felt anger building in her chest, but she pushed it down. Getting angry would only prove what they already thought about her. "Humans do fight sometimes," she said carefully, "but we also work together. That's how we built spaceships and learned to travel between stars." Thexamor laughed, showing all his sharp teeth. You think you built your ships? The Galactic Council gave you that technology because they felt sorry for you. Sarah knew that wasn't true, but she didn't argue. These cadets had already made up their minds about her. We should let you rest, Dexmore said, but his smile was not friendly. Tomorrow your real education begins. I hope you can keep up. It would be sad if the first human cadet failed because she was too stupid to understand basic concepts. After they left, Sarah sat on her bed and looked out the window. Earth was somewhere out there in the darkness, but she couldn't see it. For the first time since leaving home, she felt truly alone. Her communicator beeped. It was a message from her mother back on Earth. Hope your first day went well, sweetheart. Remember what your father always said. The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. Show them what humans can do. We're all proud of you. Sarah smiled for the first time that day. Her mother was right. She hadn't come this far to give up now. Let them think she was a violent primitive. Let them watch her and wait for her to fail. She would show them that humans belonged among the stars. She opened her study materials and began to read. The subjects were harder than anything she had studied on Earth, but she was used to things being difficult. Life on Earth had taught her that the only way to survive was to be stronger, smarter, and tougher than everything trying to kill you. Outside her window, the stars shone cold and distant. But Sarah Chen was not afraid of the cold, and she was not afraid of distance. She was human, and humans had spent their entire history reaching for impossible things. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she would prepare. And if these aliens thought they could break her spirit with words and stares, they were about to learn their first lesson about Deathworld determination. 3 weeks into her training, Sarah had learned to expect the worst from each new day. She woke up early every morning and went to the gym before most other cadets were awake. The training equipment was built for different alien body types, but she made it work. She had to be twice as good as everyone else just to be considered half as capable. In combat simulation class, Sarah discovered she had natural talent. While other cadets struggled with the virtual reality training programs, she moved through them like she had been born for battle. Her scores were among the highest in the class. Interesting, said Instructor Keldan as he watched Sarah complete a difficult urban warfare scenario. The insect-like alien clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Your reaction time is exceptional for such a primitive species. Sarah bit back her response. She had learned that defending herself only made things worse, but in other classes she struggled. Advanced quantum mechanics made no sense to her human brain. The alien mathematics used concepts that had no equivalent in Earth languages, while cadets from more advanced civilizations solved complex equations in minutes. Sarah spent hours trying to understand basic principles. Perhaps, said Professor Yilthara during one particularly difficult lesson, we should consider providing remedial education for our special needs student. The other cadets snickered. Sarah felt her face burn with embarrassment. But she kept taking notes. She would figure this out no matter how long it took. The real problem started in her second month. Sarah began noticing that her equipment would malfunction at strange times. Her combat armor's targeting system would fail right before important tests. Her study tablet would lose all her notes the night before big exams. Her food synthesizer would produce meals that tasted like metal and made her sick. At first, she thought it was just bad luck. But then she noticed Thexmore and his friends watching her during these incidents. They would whisper to each other and smile when her equipment failed. One morning, Sarah found her pillow soaked with a substance that smelled like rotting eggs. The smell was so strong it made her eyes water. When she reported it to station security, the officer looked bored. Probably just a malfunction in your room's air recycling system, he said without even looking at her pillow. We'll get someone to check it eventually. But Sarah knew it wasn't a malfunction. She had seen Thexmore's friend Veltar near her room the night before. The whispers followed her everywhere she went. When she walked into the cafeteria, conversations would stop. She would catch fragments of words: savage, dangerous, unpredictable. Some cadets would actually get up and move to different tables when she sat down. A cadet named Zixra, who looked like a small purple teddy bear, came up to her one day after class. I heard humans eat their own children when food is scarce, Zixra said with wide, frightened eyes. Is that true? No, Sarah said firmly. Humans take care of their children. We protect them. But you come from a death world. Everyone knows death world species are violent and cruel. Sarah tried to explain that humans were capable of love and kindness, but Zixra just backed away, looking more scared. The isolation was the hardest part. Sarah had always been social back on Earth. She had friends, people who cared about her. Here she ate alone, studied alone, and spent her free time alone. Sometimes she would go days without having a real conversation with anyone. She started spending time in the Academy's observation deck, looking out at the stars. It was usually empty late at night, which meant she could be alone with her thoughts without feeling like everyone was watching her. One night, she was surprised to find Commander Vexhai standing at the large window. "Cadet Chen," he said without turning around. "How are you adjusting to life at the Academy?" Sarah stood at attention. "Fine, sir." "Really? Because your instructors tell me you've filed several equipment malfunction reports, and you seem to spend a lot of time by yourself." Sarah considered telling him about the sabotage, about the cruel comments and deliberate isolation. But what was the point? He had already made it clear that she was here on probation, that everyone expected her to fail. "I'm managing, sir," she said. Commander Vexhai finally turned to look at her. The lights inside his crystal body pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. "Your combat scores are excellent," he said, "but your academic performance in advanced subjects is concerning. Perhaps the coursework is too challenging for your background." "I can handle it, sir. I just need more time to learn." "Time is something we don't have much of, Cadet. The Galactic Council is watching your progress closely. If you cannot meet our standards—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Sarah understood. "Fail, and not only would she be kicked out, but it would prove that humans didn't belong in galactic civilization." The harassment reached a new level during her 3rd month. Sarah woke up one morning to find that someone had broken into her room while she slept. Her few personal belongings, photos of her family, a small earth rock she kept as a reminder of home, were gone. In their place was a crude drawing of a human figure with X's for eyes and the word "savage" written underneath. Sarah reported the break-in, but security said there was no evidence of forced entry. They suggested she had simply misplaced her belongings. That afternoon in the cafeteria, Thexmore made his move. Sarah was sitting alone as usual, picking at a meal that tasted like cardboard. The Valdani cadet approached her table with several of his followers. "Look, everyone," Thexmore announced loudly. "The Deathworld savage is trying to eat civilized food. I hope it doesn't give you indigestion, human." The cafeteria went quiet. Every alien in the room turned to watch. "Maybe we should warn the kitchen staff," said Veltar, Thexmore's second-in-command. "Humans might try to hunt and eat the food." "Preparation staff. I heard they have to cook their food, because their digestive systems are too weak to handle fresh meat," added another. "Cadet." Sarah kept eating, trying to ignore them, but Thexmore wasn't finished. "Tell me, Sarah Chen," he said, using her name like it was something dirty. "How many of your own kind did you have to kill to earn your place here?" "On Valdani Prime, we honor strength. But human strength comes from madness, doesn't it?" Sarah's fork stopped moving. She looked up at Thexmore's yellow eyes. "I've never killed anyone," she said quietly. "Really? But that's what humans do. You're disease-carrying savages who destroy everything you touch. Your own planet is dying because you can't stop fighting long enough to take care of it." Sarah stood up slowly. She was much shorter than Thexmore, but something in her posture made the alien take a half step back. "You don't know anything about humans," she said. Her voice was still quiet, but everyone in the cafeteria could hear her clearly. "I know enough," Thexmore snarled, recovering his confidence. "I know you don't belong here among civilized beings. I know that your admission to this academy is an insult to every qualified cadet who was rejected to make room for a token primitive." Sarah felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. It was the same feeling she had gotten as a child when bullies cornered her on the playground. The same feeling her ancestors had when faced with predators on the African savanna. But she pushed it down. Getting angry would only prove their point. "You're wrong about humans," she said, "and someday you'll understand that." She picked up her tray and walked away, leaving Thexmore and his friends standing there. But as she left, she heard Thexmore's final words. "Someday soon, savage, you'll show your true nature. And when you do, everyone will see that humans are exactly what we think they are." Sarah didn't know it yet, but Thexmore was already planning to make that day come sooner than she expected. Final examination week arrived like a storm. The academy buzzed with nervous energy, as cadets prepared for the tests that would determine their future ranks and assignments. Sarah had studied harder than anyone, spending countless sleepless nights trying to master subjects that came naturally to aliens with different brain structures. The final combat simulation was scheduled for the last day. Each cadet would face it alone while their classmates and instructors watched from the observation deck. It was designed to test everything they had learned: tactical thinking, combat skills, decision-making under pressure, and the ability to adapt to unexpected situations. Sarah had performed well in practice simulations. Her human reflexes and pattern recognition gave her advantages that surprised even her instructors. While aliens with superior technology and advanced civilizations struggled with the chaos of battle, Sarah seemed to thrive in it. "It's probably just animal instinct," she heard one instructor whisper to another. "Humans are naturally violent. This simulation activates their primitive hunter brain." Sarah pretended not to hear, but the words stung. Everything she did was dismissed as instinct or accident. Her achievements were never seen as proof of intelligence or skill. 2 days before her simulation, Sarah noticed Thexmore talking quietly with technician Grulox near the simulation control room. Grulox was a small, nervous alien who maintained the training equipment. Sarah had seen him before, always hunched over computer panels making adjustments and repairs. When Thexmore saw Sarah watching, he smiled and walked away. Grulox quickly disappeared into the control room. Sarah felt a cold worry in her stomach, but she told herself she was being paranoid. Thexmore was just another cadet. He couldn't actually sabotage the official examination systems. The morning of her simulation, Sarah woke up feeling ready. She had eaten a good breakfast and done her usual morning exercises. Her equipment was checked and double-checked. Everything seemed normal. In the preparation room, she put on her combat armor and checked her weapons. The simulation used training weapons that fired harmless energy pulses. They could register hits and simulate damage without actually hurting anyone. Sarah had used them hundreds of times in practice. Commander Vexhai came to see her before the test. "This simulation will determine whether you graduate from this academy," he said. "Your performance here will be reported directly to the Galactic Council. Do not disappoint us, Cadet Chen." "I won't, sir," Sarah replied. As she walked toward the simulation chamber, Sarah noticed that more aliens than usual were gathered in the observation deck. Word had spread that the human cadet was taking her final test. Some looked curious, others skeptical. A few seemed to be hoping she would fail. Thexmore was there, of course, standing in the front row with his arms crossed. He was smiling. The simulation chamber was a large, empty room that could create any environment using holographic projections. Sarah stepped inside and waited for the program to begin. "Simulation starting in 10 seconds, announced the computer voice. "Scenario: Urban warfare. Objective: reach the evacuation point while neutralizing hostile targets." The room transformed around Sarah. She was standing in a ruined city with collapsed buildings and debris everywhere. Smoke filled the air and she could hear the distant sound of explosions. Sarah moved forward carefully, using the rubble for cover. Her training had taught her to expect enemies around every corner. She held her weapon ready and scanned for targets. The first enemy appeared as she rounded a corner, a holographic soldier firing from behind an overturned vehicle. Sarah took aim and fired. Her training weapon should have sent a harmless pulse of energy. Instead, Sarah felt a burning pain in her left shoulder. She stumbled backward, shocked. Real pain meant real weapons. This wasn't a simulation anymore. She looked down at her shoulder and saw a smoking hole in her armor. The smell of burned synthetic fabric and singed skin filled her nostrils. "Computer end simulation," she called out. Nothing happened. The program continued running. Sarah tried to reach the emergency shutdown panel on the wall, but she was trapped in the middle of the chamber. Enemy holograms appeared from multiple directions, all armed with what she now knew were real weapons. She dove behind a piece of simulated rubble as more shots flew past her. One of them hit the ground near her hand, leaving a small crater of melted metal flooring. In the observation deck, Sarah could see her classmates and instructors watching. Some looked confused by her strange behavior. Others seemed entertained. Thexmore was leaning forward with intense interest. Sarah tried to signal that something was wrong, but the observation deck was soundproof. To them, it looked like she was just struggling with a difficult simulation. A second shot caught her as she tried to move to better cover. The energy pulse grazed her ribs, burning through her armor and into her skin. Sarah gasped and rolled behind a larger piece of debris. The pain was incredible. Real plasma weapons didn't just leave marks. They cauterized wounds instantly. The smell of her own burned flesh made her stomach turn. "This isn't a simulation," she shouted toward the observation deck. "The weapons are real." But no one could hear her through the soundproof barrier. Sarah realized she had two choices: hide and hope someone noticed something was wrong, or complete the simulation and try to reach the shutdown panel at the end. The problem was, if the weapons were real, the enemies would keep shooting until they killed her. She made her decision. Sarah began moving toward the evacuation point, using every piece of cover she could find. She had grown up on Earth where everything was trying to kill her. She had survived predators, natural disasters, and diseases that would kill most aliens instantly. She would survive this too. A third shot hit her as she made a desperate run for the final objective. The plasma bolt struck her left thigh, sending her tumbling to the ground. This time the pain was so intense that her vision went white for a moment. Sarah lay on the ground, bleeding from 3 real wounds, surrounded by holographic enemies that were trying to kill her with real weapons. In the observation deck, she could see Thexmore's satisfied smile. That was when something deep inside Sarah Chen finally snapped. She had endured months of harassment, sabotage, and isolation. She had been called savage, primitive, and dangerous. She had been told that humans were violent animals who didn't belong in civilized society. Maybe it was time to show them what a human could really do when backed into a corner. Sarah's vision focused with crystal clarity. The pain in her shoulder, ribs, and thigh faded to background noise. Her heart rate slowed, and her breathing became steady and controlled. She looked at the heavy blast door that separated her from her tormentors. It was made of reinforced titanium alloy, designed to contain explosions and protect observers from dangerous simulations. Sarah Chen stood up, ignored the holographic enemies still shooting at her, and walked toward that door. It was time to introduce her classmates to the real reason Earth was classified as a death world. It wasn't just the dangerous animals or the harsh environment. It was the humans who had learned to survive. There, the door was about to learn what it meant to stand between a human and her target. Behind the reinforced barrier, Thexmore was about to discover that some primitives were primitive for a very good reason. Sarah reached the blast door and placed her hands against its surface. The metal was cold and smooth, designed by the best engineers in the galaxy to be absolutely impenetrable. It was 3 inches thick, made from titanium alloy composites that could withstand ship weapon fire. Behind the door, she could see the observation deck through the reinforced window. Dozens of alien faces stared at her with confusion. They couldn't understand why she was touching the door instead of finishing the simulation. Thexmore was in the front row, his yellow eyes bright with satisfaction. He thought his plan had worked perfectly. Sarah would either die from the plasma shots or be so badly injured that she would have to withdraw from the academy. Either way, the first human cadet would be gone, and the galaxy would learn that death, world savages didn't belong in civilized institutions. Sarah examined the door more carefully. Her fingers traced along the edges, looking for any weakness. The door was held in place by magnetic locks and reinforced hinges. Under normal circumstances, it would take industrial equipment to remove it, but these weren't normal circumstances. The plasma burns on Sarah's body were sending waves of pain through her nervous system, but instead of weakening her, the pain was triggering something much older and more primitive. Her adrenal glands dumped massive amounts of hormones into her bloodstream. Her heart rate spiked. Her muscles began to flood with oxygen and energy. This was the same biological response that had allowed her ancestors to fight off saber-toothed tigers and survive in a world filled with predators. When humans were cornered, when they were hurt, when they were pushed beyond their limits, they didn't just give up. They became something more dangerous than anything that was hunting them. Sarah found what she was looking for, a microscopic gap where the door frame met the wall. It was barely visible, designed to allow for thermal expansion. No alien would have noticed it. No alien would have thought it mattered. But humans had spent millions of years using tools, finding ways to gain leverage and multiply their strength. Sarah's ancestors had moved boulders and built pyramids using nothing but muscle, rope, and clever engineering. She pushed her fingers into the tiny gap. The metal edges were sharp enough to cut her skin, but she didn't care. Blood made her fingers slippery, but it also helped them slide deeper into the crack. In the observation deck, Commander Vex High leaned forward with concern. "What is she doing?" he asked. "I think the plasma shots damaged her brain," said one instructor. "She's acting irrationally." But Instructor Keldan, who had watched Sarah in combat simulations for months, looked worried. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think she's irrational at all." Sarah got her fingers deeper into the gap and began to pull. At first, nothing happened. The door was designed to stay in place even under extreme stress. But Sarah wasn't just pulling with her arms. She braced her feet against the wall and used her entire body as a lever. Every muscle in her back, shoulders, and legs worked together. Her bones, which had grown dense and strong under Earth's heavy gravity, provided a framework that could handle enormous pressure. The door creaked. The sound was soft at first, barely audible. But in the silent observation deck, everyone heard it. A few aliens stood up from their seats. "That's impossible," whispered Professor Yilthara. "The structural integrity of that door." Sarah felt something give. One of the magnetic locks had been strained beyond its design limit. She adjusted her grip and pulled harder. Her vision started to go red around the edges. Every cell in her body was screaming for oxygen. Her muscles were burning with the effort, but she could feel the door starting to move. Another magnetic lock failed with a sharp crack. Sarah's breathing became deep and rhythmic. Her ancestors had used this same focused determination to hunt mammoths across frozen tundra, to cross oceans in tiny boats, to climb mountains that touched the sky. When humans decided to break something, they broke it. The third magnetic lock snapped. The door shifted in its frame, moving just a fraction of an inch. But that tiny movement created more space for Sarah's fingers. She got a better grip and pulled with everything she had. In the observation deck, aliens were backing away from the window. Some were calling for security. Others were just staring in shock. Thexmore's confident smile had disappeared. His yellow eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. The fourth and final magnetic lock gave way with a sound like breaking glass. Now only the reinforced hinges held the door in place. Sarah shifted her position and began working on them. The hinges were stronger than the magnetic locks, designed to be the last line of defense. But they had been designed by aliens who had never seen what humans could do when survival was on the line. Sarah grabbed the door frame with both hands and braced her feet against the wall. She pulled with a strength that surprised even her. Her muscles stood out like cables under her skin. Sweat mixed with blood from her plasma burns. The first hinge began to bend. "Stop her!" someone shouted in the observation deck. "She's going to break containment." But no one knew how to stop her. The door was the barrier between them and her. If she broke through it, there would be nothing protecting them from the injured, bleeding human. The second hinge started to crack. Sarah's mind was perfectly clear despite the physical strain. She could see exactly how the door was constructed, where the stress points were, how to apply force most efficiently. Her engineering classes had taught her about leverage and structural failure. Her Earth upbringing had taught her how to use every advantage when fighting for survival. The third hinge snapped. The massive door was now held in place by only one corner. Sarah could see through the gap into the observation deck. Aliens were running for the exits. Emergency alarms were starting to sound, but Thexmore was still there, frozen in place, staring at her through the window. Sarah looked directly into his yellow eyes. She wanted him to see what he had created. He had tried to break her spirit with harassment and isolation. He had tried to kill her with sabotaged weapons. Now he would learn what happened when you cornered a human. The final hinge gave way with a sound like thunder. The 3-inch thick titanium alloy blast door, weighing over 2,000 pounds, tore free from its frame. Sarah caught it as it fell and set it aside with the careful precision of someone moving a piece of furniture. The observation deck was now completely open. There was nothing between Sarah and the aliens who had tormented her for months. Sarah stepped through the doorway, blood still dripping from her plasma burns, her clothes torn and smoking. Behind her, the holographic simulation continued to run, filling the training chamber with artificial explosions and gunfire. The observation deck was almost empty now. Most of the aliens had fled when they realized the barrier was failing. But a few remained, including Commander Vexai, Instructor Keldan, and Thexmore. Sarah walked slowly toward the Valdani cadet. She didn't run. She didn't shout. She didn't make threats. She just walked with the steady, patient pace of a predator that knows its prey has nowhere to run. Thexmore tried to back away, but he was already against the far wall. His gray scales had turned pale and his hands were shaking. "You sabotaged my simulation," Sarah said quietly. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "You tried to kill me. I don't know what you're talking about," Thexmore stammered. Sarah stopped directly in front of him. Even injured and exhausted, she radiated a dangerous energy that made the much larger alien shrink back against the wall. "You wanted to see the real me," Sarah said. "You kept calling me savage, primitive, dangerous. You said I would show my true nature eventually." She gestured toward the torn doorway behind her. "Congratulations. You were right." Thexmore opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in his life, the proud Valdani warrior understood what it meant to be prey. Sarah didn't touch him. She didn't need to. Her message had been delivered with perfect clarity. The door hanging askew behind her said everything that needed to be said about what humans could do when pushed too far. The Academy's medical bay had never treated a human before. The doctors worked frantically to understand Sarah's biology, while treating her plasma burns. Her wounds were serious, but they were amazed at how quickly her body was already starting to heal itself. "Remarkable," muttered Dr. Zethkan as he examined the shoulder wound. "Her cellular regeneration rate is 3 times faster than most species. And her pain tolerance? She should be unconscious from these injuries." Sarah lay on the medical table watching security officers examine the torn blast door. They were taking measurements, running structural analysis, trying to understand how one small human had accomplished something that should have required industrial equipment. Commander Vexhai entered the medical bay with a serious expression. He dismissed the doctors and security officers, leaving himself alone with Sarah. "The investigation is complete," he said without preamble. "Technician Grulox has confessed to modifying your simulation weapons. The energy signatures from your wounds confirm that live plasma charges were used instead of training pulses." Sarah nodded but said nothing. "Cadet Thexmore has been expelled from the Academy. He will face criminal charges for attempted murder. His co-conspirators have also been removed." "Good," Sarah said simply. Commander Vexhai moved closer to her bed. The lights inside his crystal body pulsed more rapidly than usual. "I owe you an explanation, Cadet Chen, and an apology." Sarah looked at him with surprise. She had never heard a Galactic Alliance officer apologize to anyone, especially not to a human. "Your admission to this academy was never probationary," the commander continued. "That was a lie I told to maintain the illusion." "What illusion?" "The illusion that we didn't know what humans were capable of." Commander Vexhai sat down in a chair beside her bed. "The Galactic Council has been studying Earth for decades. We knew about your wars, your survival rates on a death world, your technological advancement despite impossible odds." Sarah felt confused. "Then why?" "Because knowing and seeing are different things. The Council needed proof that humans could be allies rather than threats. They needed to know if the stories were exaggeration or reality." Commander Vexhai gestured toward the doorway where the torn blast door was still being examined. "I think we have our answer." Over the following days, news of what Sarah had done spread throughout the Academy and beyond. The torn door became legendary. Cadets who had avoided her now whispered about her with awe instead of fear. Some tried to approach her, curious about the human who had ripped apart reinforced titanium with her bare hands. But the real change came from the instructors. They stopped making comments about primitive humans and Deathworld savages. Instead, they began asking Sarah questions about human tactics, human physiology, human survival methods. "Your species fascinates me," admitted Professor Yilthara during a private conversation. "We always assumed that intelligence and violence were opposites. But humans seem to have developed both simultaneously." "We had to," Sarah explained. "Our world tried to kill us every day. We got smart or we died. And that combination of intelligence and survival instinct, it makes you formidable." Sarah was cleared for duty within a week. Her wounds had healed with remarkable speed, leaving only faint scars as reminders of what had happened. She returned to classes expecting more isolation and harassment. Instead, she found cadets asking if they could join her study groups. "Would you mind if I sat here?" asked Zixra, the small purple alien who had once been afraid Sarah would eat her children. I'm having trouble with tactical analysis and everyone says you're the best in our class. Sarah smiled and gestured to the empty chair. Of course. As more cadets joined them, Sarah found herself becoming the center of a diverse study group. Aliens from dozens of worlds worked together, sharing knowledge and helping each other prepare for exams. You know, said Cadet Morthek, a crystalline being from the Andromeda sector. My people have a saying. The strongest crystal is formed under the greatest pressure. I think your death world may have created something remarkable in humanity. The formal ceremony came 2 months later. Sarah stood in the Academy's Great Hall wearing her dress uniform, surrounded by her graduating class. Commander Vexhai called her name, and she walked forward to receive her commission. Cadet Sarah Chen, he announced to the assembled crowd, has demonstrated exceptional courage, determination, and tactical ability. By the authority of the Galactic Alliance Military Command, I hereby grant her the rank of lieutenant, with assignment to the Exploration Division. The audience applauded. Sarah saw aliens she had never spoken to standing and clapping for her success. Even some who had initially feared her were now smiling with genuine respect. But the real surprise came after the ceremony. Commander Vexhai approached her with a small group of senior officers. Lieutenant Chen, he said formally, the Galactic Council has a proposition for you. Sir, they want you to return to Earth and establish a human military training program. It seems they're very interested in recruiting more of your species. Sarah felt a thrill of excitement. Going home, representing humanity in the larger galaxy, training other humans to join the stars. It was more than she had ever dared hope for. What changed their minds? She asked. Commander Vexhai smiled, an expression that looked strange on his crystalline features. Let's just say that after your demonstration, the Council realized that having humans as enemies would be extremely unwise. Much better to have you as allies. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same observation deck where she had torn down the blast door. But now she wasn't alone. 12 new human cadets were taking their final simulations, watched by alien instructors who treated them with respect and curiosity rather than fear. The door had been repaired, but a small plaque had been mounted beside it. The inscription was simple. Lieutenant S. Chen, first human graduate. Sometimes the only way forward is through. Sarah smiled as she watched her fellow humans excel in their training. They faced the same challenges she had overcome. The complex mathematics, the alien technologies, the cultural differences. But they weren't facing them alone. How do you think they'll do? Asked Instructor Keldan, joining her at the window. They'll do fine, Sarah said confidently. Humans are good at adapting. And if someone tries to sabotage them like Thexmore tried with you, Sarah's smile became slightly dangerous. Then they'll learn the same lesson Thexmore learned. Humans are very good at solving problems. In the simulation chamber below, a human cadet named Marcus Rivera completed his urban warfare scenario with a perfect score. The alien observers took notes documenting human tactics and abilities. Remarkable, muttered one professor. Their pattern recognition is extraordinary. It's not just pattern recognition, Sarah said. It's survival instinct. We've been solving life or death problems for millions of years. Military tactics are just another type of puzzle. As the last simulation ended, Sarah felt a deep satisfaction. She had proven that humans belonged among the stars. More than that, she had proven that Earth's harsh environment hadn't made humans into monsters. It had made them into something the galaxy desperately needed. Survivors. Problem solvers. Allies who would never give up, never surrender, never stop fighting for what was right. The torn door had become a symbol throughout the Academy and beyond. Not a symbol of human violence, but of human determination. When the galaxy faced impossible challenges, when enemies seemed too strong to defeat, when barriers seemed too thick to break through, they would remember the human who had torn through titanium with her bare hands. They would remember that sometimes, when everything else failed, you just needed someone stubborn enough to keep trying until something gave way. And in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations and advanced technologies, that kind of stubborn determination was worth more than all the plasma cannons and force fields ever built. Sarah Chen had come to the Academy as the first human cadet. She was leaving as something much more important, proof that humanity's future among the stars was not just possible, but inevitable. After all, Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history breaking through barriers that should have been impossible to break. One door, no matter how strong, was never going to stop them.